What if Russia won the First World War as presented in The Name of the Tsar? And thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. The first 200 to click on the link in the description will get 20% off the annual subscription. So, big point of divergence here. When Russia, actually no, lol. It's in 1898 when the US just decided it did not want Guantanamo Bay and that Spain could keep it. Doesn't stop an angry Serb from killing the Archduke though. So Russia does its thing during the First World War, just like really well this time, with the Brusilov offensive of 1916 pushing the Austrians all the way back to the Carpathian Mountains. And the Romanians watch this and are like, oh, that's cool, I want to try that, and join the Entente invading Austria-Hungary and Bulgaria. Back in Austria-Hungary, people ain't happy, and protesters gather in Prague and Budapest, calling for an end of the war and for independence. So Austria and Bulgaria signed an armistice with the Entente, and then Austria goes boom. Now, Russia is free to beat the shit out of Germany, which they do. First liberating Lithuania.
Thank you!
Russia
has freed us!
Oh, I wouldn't say free. More like under new management.
So basically Germany gets jiggas up and calls for a ceasefire in 1917. Except they're like, hey, can we still keep military access in Belgium though? And we will give you back Alsace-Lorraine. Pretty please? To which the Entente is like, frick off, and demands an unconditional surrender.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
So the Russians start marching on Berlin again, and the Germans get curb stomped in the Battle of Königsberg. To which the German population promptly begins to become sick of the Kaiser's shit, and the Navy outright defies Berlin's orders. With the French liberating Belgium, the Germans finally get the idea and join the peace negotiations in Brussels. It is decided to split Germany into two spheres of influence. The Russian sector would occupy Prussia, Saxony, and the northwestern part of Germany, establishing friendly regimes. The south would fall under the French sphere of influence. The Confederation of the Rhine and the kingdoms of Baden and Bavaria were born. Also because they're cousins, the Tsar decided to leave Willie on the throne in Prussia, which leaves the French and British pretty salty. Another treaty is signed in Venice, splitting up Austria-Hungary, but the Habsburgs get to keep the, well, actually Austria-Hungary portion of the empire. The Ottomans are the last Central Powers holdout.
I didn't hear no bell.
But after getting pushed out of Israel by Britain, the breakout of the Arab Revolt, and the Russian invasion in the north, the Ottomans finally threw in the towel. And now the Great War is over. So yeah, now it's 1918 and the war is over. But the territory of the former Central Powers is in bad shape. The Entente powers gather in the oil-rich city of Baku to discuss the Ottoman Empire's fate. Istanbul would be given to the Russians, with the Middle Eastern portions of the empire being portioned out to the UK and France. And of course, the Arabs do not get their promised state. Greece also gets some small concessions, but not enough, and they are now salty. Remember that Bavarian state made under the French sphere of influence? Yeah, they immediately fall into war. The workers of Bavaria, under Karl Liebknecht, march on the streets of Munich to establish a new socialist republic and overthrow the current regime. Except nobody does anything to stop them because the king had not gotten around to forming a police force yet, and the soldiers who had just got done fighting in a war did not feel like repeating that again. In just a couple of days, Karl Liebknecht and his followers seized Bavaria, proclaiming the Bavarian Socialist Republic, and the new German Liberation Army is formed with around 100,000 men and Ernst Thälmann as its supreme leader. Of course, nobody else really likes this. So when in mid-1918, unarmed protesters appeared in Berlin, the Freikorps beat them up. The threat of unarmed protesters taken care of, he phones his cousin in Russia and asks him to send more troops his way to stop any more uprisings. So when some former sailors proclaim the Northern Commune in neighboring Niederdeutschland, the Freikorps and the Russians invade, and once again beat the shit out of the commies. Even with the communists defeated, however, the German public is still pretty pissed about the Kaiser inviting in the Russians, so he is voted out as supreme leader and replaced with a military government, but the state still remaining a constitutional monarchy approved by the Tsar. Communism is still kicking in Bavaria, now called the Southern Commune. They march on Baden with little opposition, and then march on the Rhine. The French, fearing a full revolution, send troops to ally with the Freikorps and stop the Red Army at the Battle of Mainz. The Communards retreat back to Munich, thinking that a French invasion is now coming, but turns out the French are tired and don't pursue. But the French do keep troops in the Rhineland, turning it into a de facto puppet, and also do a sneaky by annexing the Saarland. With all this going on, the Greeks are still raging at the Treaty of Baku and invade Turkey. The Greeks are supported by Britain, and Turkey by Russia. All that comes of this is now a whole lot of Greeks and Turks die, with a new Cold War between Russia and Britain being born. Russia does another sneaky by arming an Irish uprising against the British, which succeeds, leading to Irish independence. Oh yeah, I should also mention what is happening in America, which is not a whole lot. They are just kind of sitting there in isolation, which is formally laid out in the Harding Doctrine of Isolation. In Britain, strikes began to pop up across the nation, which turned violent. But this isn't Kaiserreich, so they are all violently put down, and they also kill a lot of innocent civilians in the process. Yikes. Still, with all these communist revolutions happening, Saxony, Niederdeutschland, and Prussia formed an alliance called the Berlin Treaty Organization to protect themselves. Oh, and before this video is over, I should probably mention China. In 1927, the Chinese Civil War broke out, though Russia also swoops in and begins supporting King loyalists, who by 1929 had enough support to launch the Beijing Uprising, starting a civil war within a civil war. Things get even crazier in 1933 when Japan invades Manchuria, turning this into a four-sided affair. Well, that is until Russia invades Manchuria too the next year, so they and Japan get together and split the spoils, setting up their own Manchurian states. And like last thing, remember that Baku guy I made a video about 4 years ago? Well, he takes power in Hungary and creates a communist state there. So yeah, now it's 1936 and that's where the lore ends. So if you want to find out what happens next, well, you should probably play the game. But even if I cannot tell you what happens after 1936, I can tell you how to learn interactively through Brilliant's fun, hands-on lessons in math, science, and computer science. After all, the best way to learn is by doing it yourself, and Brilliant is a perfect place for this. Interactive learning on Brilliant helps you learn 6 times more effectively than through watching video lectures. Brilliant has lots of great courses for all ability and knowledge levels, so you will definitely find something that interests you, with topics ranging from geometry fundamentals to special relativity to quantum computing. On Brilliant, you are not just watching a lecture, then answering some questions. It is much more interactive and engaging. As you can see here with me doing the algorithm fundamentals course, you'll get practice with real problem solving that helps you train your critical thinking skills and creative problem solving skills. Every problem comes with a step-by-step solution that helps you understand the reasoning for each step. A course I really enjoy doing that I think you guys would also like is a scientific thinking course, which dispenses with the usual number crunching and mathematics and instead subs in something more useful: physical insight. What I especially like about this course are the interactive visuals that very clearly communicate and teach the ideas presented in the course. Join the millions of people already learning on Brilliant with a special offer just for my viewers. Head to brilliant.org/LoganProductions to get started for free with Brilliant's interactive lessons. The first 200 listeners will also get a 20% off their annual membership.